Have you ever wondered what it's like to work in law enforcement? Here on Behind the Star, we share stories about the Orange County Sheriff's Office, Central Florida's largest law enforcement agency. From forensics to dispatch to the deputies on patrol, we'll talk to the brave men and women who protect our community. This is Behind the Star, the official podcast of the Orange County Sheriff's Office. Welcome to Behind the Star, the official podcast of the Orange County Sheriff's Office. My name is Jon Busdeker, your host here at Behind the Star. And before we get started, I'm actually really excited because we are on location again for this episode. I'm out at Valencia College East, and I'll tell you why we're out here in a second. But I don't know if anybody saw this week. We had a news conference at the Sheriff's Office. We had a missing persons update that we did, and the sheriff was there and some of our detectives were there, and it was a really fascinating news conference because we highlighted some of our missing persons cases that we have. We have more than 100 cases, some of them dating back all the way to the 1970s, and it was really emotional news conference because a lot of the families were there and their loved ones are missing. These are stories about people that had just sort of vanished almost, and there's not a lot of details about what happened. And so if you get a chance, go to our Facebook page or on Twitter and check out the news conference. It was just for me, I've never seen anything like that, and meeting the families just wanting answers and knowing that a lot of our deputies and our detectives are looking for these people. So if you know anything, obviously send us the information. Crime Line is also helping out with that. And if you know anything, you can get a $5,000 reward. So just go check that out on our Facebook page and our Instagram page and Twitter. And if you're not following us, I suggest you follow us because we have all kinds of great content and all kinds of great stories that we're doing on the Sheriff's Office website and social media. So anyway, like I said, we're out here at Valencia College East. We're on the campus out here. We do a lot of training out here, and our recruits come out here to get ready to become deputies. But I'm here because we've been trying to do this podcast for weeks and weeks and weeks, and we finally figured out a day to do it. I'm actually here with Master Deputy Jeff Stinson. He's with the canine unit, and he is a canine handler. Welcome to Behind the Star.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Glad we get to finally make this happen.
I know. You and I keep going back and forth on what days to do this, so it's sort of worked out today, which I'm really glad. And like I said, I've been out here before. I've seen the recruits do their training, which is pretty fun to watch because they run a lot and do a lot of exercises, and they do a lot of classroom stuff too. But I've never actually been out to the canine training part of it, so I'm glad I got to come out here and see the glorious trailers that you have.
Our phenomenal office that we have.
Yeah, well, one day maybe you'll get some new ones.
One day, that's in the works.
And so first of all, I want to just kind of explain what exactly does the canine unit do.
So the Orange County Sheriff's Office Canine Unit, first of all, we have 20 dogs in the unit, 18 full service, and I'll describe what full service is in here in just a minute, and then 2 bloodhounds, which is the dog that I work, the classification that I work, and we're just a supplement uniform patrol, and we're out there to catch the bad guys and help the community.
So you said you have 20 dogs, but you have a canine, but there's 2 different kinds of dogs that work out of the canine unit.
Correct. Yeah. So the full service classification is your typical dog that you see on the streets, whether it be your German Shepherds, your Belgian Malinois, and they're trained for apprehension work, tracking and apprehension. That's the main dogs that you see on the news and everything else. They also have a specialty. So whether they're narcotics dogs or an EOD dog, an explosive dog. So they're trained in a specialty. So that's 18 of our dogs. The other 2, which one I am fortunate enough to work, is a bloodhound. And it's a very, very cool breed to work. It's strictly tracking. There is no other specialty work. There's no apprehension work. It is just strictly tracking human odor.
And so when you say tracking, is it going back to this missing persons or people?
Yeah, that plays in well. Yeah, that's our primary function is tracking missing juveniles, missing elderly folks. But the cool part about it is human odor is human odor. So I've deployed anything from a homicide to a missing 2-year-old. So anything that has human odor from a track, a burglary, robbery, homicide, when the suspect leaves the scene, we can track just as good as if not better than the Shepherds and Malinois.
So you said you help out the patrol unit. Tell me how that works. And so when does the canine unit get called out? What types of cases or what types of crimes do you get called out for? Just maybe talk about that a little bit.
So we're a 24/7 operation, just like Uniform Patrol. And I got to give a plug out to the Uniform Patrol. That's the backbone of this agency. And so we're happy to support them and supplement them. So we have 24-hour coverage, A and B rotation. So we're out all hours of the day. And when Uniform Patrol requests a canine for a building search or a crime in progress, or maybe a crime that's over with that they need a track for, they will call the canine unit and will respond and supplement their work.
Are there specific types of crimes that the canines are called out for, or could it just be anything?
Well, it's not anything. We've got to have for a building search, we got to clear a building safer, because it's better to put a dog in for safety of our deputies than clearing a large building. So we'll put a dog in. The dog can track down somebody a lot faster inside of a building.
And when you say clearing, that's what you mean. There's like a bad guy in there.
So for instance, we get a burglary alarm at a big warehouse or at a Walmart or a Kmart, something that's closed. We're not going to put 2 or 3 deputies in there to clear several thousand square feet. The dog is going to be able to respond, put the dog in, and clear it a lot faster and a lot safer for our deputies.
Okay, all right, and then you get called out because you have a bloodhound. It'd be a different reason.
Correct. For instance, for me, it could be anything from, hey, we just had a burglary and the guy ran out the back sliding glass door. We'll put the dog on the ground, the last known location of the bad guy, and hopefully track him down and locate him. Yeah.
So like how often do they find the person? I mean, is it 50-50?
Yeah, I don't want to put exact numbers on it, but I can tell you this, that it's a team effort, because the canine can't catch the bad guys without our patrol unit setting up a perimeter and doing a good job there. So really, it really is a team effort. Whenever we can get patrol on a perimeter, we can get the canine there quick, and we can get our aviation unit and the chase unit above us to help us catch the bad guy. When all that's flowing, the numbers are good.
And we've talked to Chase and Helicopter, the aviation
awesome.
unit before. Yeah. So if you missed that podcast, go back a few episodes and you can listen to them. But so then who determines if you go out or not? Is it your call? Is it the patrol's call? I mean, how does that work?
Yeah. So when a patrol will call the canine unit, and you can, it's basically like anything, time in the saddle. Once you know the calls and how they generate and things like that. But when patrol calls us, we're going to go and we're going to assess the call. Sometimes it's just not conducive. If we have a lot of contamination, it's unsafe to put our dog in a situation.
What do you mean by contamination?
So if, say, for instance, I drive, we've got something down off I drive, and there's a convention letting out of 400 or 500 people.
Oh, okay.
We're not. How are we going to be able to differentiate that one particular person? The flip side of that, what's unique about my work with the Bloodhound is we can take an independent scent article. So if a child's missing or an elderly person's missing, we've deployed off toothbrushes.
Really?
We've deployed off of brushes for your hair. Unfortunately, we've deployed off underwear. It is what it is. Everybody has their own scent profile.
And so I have dogs. They love underwear.
Yeah, that's a lot of odor. They
love eating that too.
Yeah.
Eating poop sometimes too.
A lot of odor. So that will help us identify the scent profile that we're looking for. But again, it's weather conditions. It's human contamination, animal contamination. We have a lot of dogs and cats in this community. And a lot of cross contamination from that can really hinder and slow down our work. That's why it's important that we are that supplemental unit. It takes other things to catch the bad guy, including patrol and aviation.
So Jeff, how did you end up here at the canine unit? How long have you been a deputy, and how did you end up here?
Well, I started here in 2008
at the sheriff's office.
Yeah, I grew up in the Orange County community, and I know it sounds cheesy, but I've always wanted to be an Orange County deputy.
No, that sounds great.
Yeah,
I love that answer.
Yeah, I started my career in 2004 working for the Orange County Jail, and it was a dream of mine to get to the sheriff's office. And I've been here since 2008. I got in the unit in 2016.
Okay, all right.
So
what did you do for those 8 years?
So I was in patrol. I was an FTO in patrol in Sector 2 out here at the East Side. Then I went to motors. I got to experience the Orange County Sheriff's Office motor unit. Great unit.
Yeah.
Love that unit.
Motorcycles for people that don't know.
Yeah, I got to ride the motorcycles around. And then I transferred back to Sector 3 patrol. Did the FTO thing for a while, and then the canine unit came open, and I said it's time for me to put in for that, to check that box off in my career, and I was very fortunate enough to get that.
How come? Why did you want to be part of the canine unit?
Well, working in patrol, it's kind of you see the dogs show up on scene, you see how they work. I was kind of inspired by that, and seeing how that unit comes in and really closes it out or saves the day, so to speak. And it's kind of cool, And working around the dogs and some of the supervisors and deputies in this unit while I was in patrol, I'm like, no, I need to go to that unit and do that. And that's what I wanted to do.
What's your dog's name?
Hyde.
Hyde.
Yeah.
All right.
You can run, but you can't hide.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So do you have dog? Not this dog, not your canine dog, but like, do you have dogs at home?
I don't have a personal dog. We had, unfortunately, years ago, we had to put our dog down, and we just never replaced it. And now that the sheriff pays for this dog, it's a win-win.
Is that one of the reasons though that you wanted to be a canine? Is because you grew up with pets or not?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody loves the dogs, or at least in my my family, everybody loves dogs, so I don't think that was a driving force to come to the unit. I really believe it's because I enjoy law enforcement and seeing that aspect and catching bad guys, and in this unit you can do that.
So when you got approved to be in the unit, do they pair you with a dog? Do you get a puppy and you train it? I mean, I want to talk about training.
Yeah.
I mean, how does that work?
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. So when I got to the unit, it's not like we have a breeding program or anything like that. So we use outside vendors. And my vendor that we went to was all the way in West Virginia.
Really?
So we went up there, tested 3 or 4 different dogs, and we brought Hyde home. That's just the beginning of it. And then switching hats to our full service dogs, we use a local vendor out of Volusia County.
And those are like the German Shepherds?
The Belgian Malinois,
Yeah.
the typical police apprehension dogs that you see on the street. And they have the breeding program through the vendors, and our trainers, our FDLE instructors, and our supervisors will go out there and assess dogs. They're looking for drive, they're looking for that loyalty, that passion to do the police work. Just like our recruiters are when we're going out there looking for cops. We're looking for some qualities in the dogs. And when they make the selection process, again, it's not over. That's just the beginning.
Yeah.
They're doing 400 plus hours of training on site here. And I got to give a plug out to our agency because we've invested in a lot of our handlers here at the agency, where we have FDLE, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, certified instructors that work here. So we're able to do our own training in-house, certifications. We assist the Orlando Police Department, a lot of your smaller jurisdictions that just don't have that training aspect. So we do all of that here, right where you're sitting today, here behind Valencia.
So what was it about Hyde that made you choose Hyde?
Well, unfortunately, being the new guy, you don't get to choose.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You have your supervisor. I was up there with them. Of course, they let me participate as the new guy, but that comes down to the seasoned handlers and the supervisors that have been around a while, looking for that drive in the dog and that tracking aspect. So I was thrilled when we got Hyde. That's the one that in the back of my mind, day one, I wanted. And he just produced the right way with tracking and the drive to really to find the guys.
So you mentioned 400 hours of training. Tell me about that.
That's a minimum.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a minimum. Yeah.
What's the training? And I know there's two separate, so we'll talk about your dog, but the other ones, you call them the full
service.
Service
that's the
dogs.
term we use.
Yeah, the nice car wash.
Yeah,
dogs.
yeah. The ones that you see, on all over the TV.
I assume their training's a little bit different than Hyde's.
It is.
So let's talk about their training first.
Sure.
What's their training like? What do they have to go through?
Sure. So when we get the dog, it's basic obedience. The heeling, the sitting, voice and verbal commands. But in all when that's going on, it's bonding. It's very important that these dogs and the handlers have an important bond, because at the end of the day, that's a canine team. They're a team, and they've got to protect each other. So that bond early on is very important. And it's like any relationship. As the longer the relationship, the bond gets stronger. But it's important to establish that right off the bat. So there's a lot of bonding, a lot of obedience. And then we go into like a scent discrimination, which basically we're looking for that scent profile, that one person track. So we do scent discrimination. The full service dogs will also do building searches or area searches. Basically, if you look out on our field here today, you see 6 boxes out there. We'll put a guy out there that the dog doesn't know or the handler knows where they're at. They'll go hide, and what they're doing is they're looking for that fresh human odor to locate, and that simulates a building search. It simulates an open car lot search or wherever. So a lot of that. Obviously, the apprehension work. Your typical sleeve that you see a decoy catching.
I think a lot of people have seen those
they
videos
understand that,
where you see the guy running away.
Looks like the Marshmallow Man running away.
All of a sudden you see a dog sort of running behind it, and then the dog jumps up and gets the person.
Yeah, and that's important because the dog is responding to the handler's direction. So whether it's go apprehend the guy or calling them back, a recall, that's an important thing as well. So there's a lot of time and effort put into that as well.
And so what's the difference between that training and the training with Hyde?
So the last part of the full service is exactly what I do in bloodhound work, and that's tracking. That is your typical starting point with one human odor profile, tracking them down, whether it's 100 yards, going out. I've done one up to 7 miles.
I was going to ask you, how that is that typical, or is there like a range? Or
no. I mean, we have to train for everything. Generally, our full service dogs, it's pretty close. We like to keep them less than about an hour old track. So think about how long somebody can cover in an hour. It's a long ways. That's why, again, it's important that patrol and with the perimeter gets them to go to ground for our full service dogs, or even the bloodhound. We got to get them to go to ground and contain them. So it could be 100 feet. It could be 7 miles.
Yeah.
With mine. So the last part of that training, like I described in tracking, is basically what we focus on in the bloodhound world. We will do obedience, on lead obedience, just like you would do with the full service dogs. But our bread and butter is tracking. So we will do a ton of tracks.
So the full service dogs can do some tracking, but the
absolutely.
bloodhounds are
and
just
they're fantastic
better at it. Or
well,
they're trained better.
It's a little
at
bit longer. I think if you ask, and I'm sure it can be argued either way, depending on what kind of dog you got in the back of your car. But I think it's proven that the full service dogs, the Shepherds and Malinois, do a fantastic job tracking. It's just a smaller profile or smaller time that they're going to be able to do that. The general calls that I get, somebody left at noon and I'm not getting the call till 7 or 8 o'clock at night.
Oh, so it can be a long.
That's correct. Yeah, that's going to be out of the realm of or out of the world of the full service dogs. That's why we pay Hyde the big bucks. That's why the sheriff pays him the big bucks and pays that food bill is for that nose. And so we're able to take an article from that location, from that person's, like I said, all those articles we described before that has their particular profile on it. We're able to scent that at a location that they were last at, and hopefully we come up with finding them.
Is yours is Hyde mostly for missing persons and
yeah.
Okay, so if Hyde were to find whoever Hyde is looking for, he's not going to apprehend.
Correct.
It's just so you can get to him and find
Correct,
him.
and that's the same whether it's a missing kid or adult, or we're tracking for a crime. Hyde in his work is not an apprehension dog.
Yeah.
So that's why it's important that I have patrol with me if we are trying to track down a bad guy, is that they're able to take over once we find, because my dog's going to sit there and smile at you because it's a game to him. It's a game, but he knows there is no aggression there. There is no training for that apprehension. It's hey, Daddy, I found the guy you told me to go look for. Now what? You know what I mean? So that's why it's unique with him, and also with tracking down kids and elderly people. You
don't want them to.
You almost want that friendly face at the end as
Exactly.
well. You know what I mean? You don't want anything to cause any kind of grief at the end of that, or problems with the person. So.
You mentioned food. I mean, do all the dogs get the same kind of food? Or?
No, there's a couple different brands that are approved. Unfortunately, for me and Hyde and for the sheriff's wallet, is Hyde's on a special food.
Everybody seems to always have a special food guy for their dogs.
He's interesting. So he's got a little bit of allergies, whatever that would cause him to have a certain type of food. But hey, that's the sheriff's bill, so I'm okay with it.
So do everybody who's a canine handler, they take the dogs home, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, they're part of our family. Yeah.
And so you live with it, and do you treat it like a regular dog or at home, or is there certain things you can and can't do?
Well, with the bloodhound, it's typically like any dog. That dog listens better to my kids than it does to me. I mean, it's a great family dog. He lives outside. He's got a whole. The agency does provide kennels. I built mine. He's got a little window AC unit.
Really?
Really? Yeah. So if I ever, you got to see that. If I'm ever in the doghouse with the wife, that's where I'm going to stay. You know what I mean? Because it's
pretty
nice.
good, though,
right,
actually.
It's nice. So, but yeah, the family interacts with them very well, and a lot of our handlers, even the full service dogs, they're trained just so well and acclimated to the family life that they know when Daddy comes out of the house with a uniform, we're going to work. When they get into that tracking harness or that patrol harness and go to work, it's like us putting on our uniform and vest. It just clicks, and they are able to turn it on and off for the most part.
So your dog's name is Hyde. There's other dogs here. How do they get their names?
So generally, it is the handler that picks it. Obviously, it's approved through the chain, but it's really never been an issue as far as a handler picking the name. So,
okay.
It's just we have some unique ones. That's
Yeah. And so the person who's paired with it gets to name the dog.
That's correct.
That's great. Yeah. That's great. Yeah. And so and you mentioned the dogs come home with you. They're part of the family, and that's a big point to make, because a lot, obviously dogs live 8, 10, 12 years, even longer sometimes. Right. And so these dogs become connected to our deputies, and unfortunately when they do pass away, it's a big deal.
It's a big deal. Unfortunately we've had that this past year with Canine Falco, and that was after training and on duty. But we have plenty that people don't hear about, just the family inside of Canine, that after a dog has retired and living with a handler or with another employee of the sheriff's office, because we will give them away to good homes, and a few of them have them. But you never really hear about those dogs that serve this community for 9, 10, 11 years, and then in retirement they pass. But yeah, it is a big deal. And
Falco's a good point. If you don't know, if you go back through our social media, Falco did pass away, and there was video of it, and I think it has nearly 1 million views on Facebook, because first of all, I think a lot of people love dogs, but second of all, it was a dog that was serving our community, and it had a connection with a lot of people. I know the people that worked at that animal hospital had
absolutely.
a connection to it, and maybe that's something you can talk about too. I mean, dogs get sick all the time, and dogs break legs sometimes,
they do,
and they have to go to the vet. Do we have a specific vet?
We do. We have a particular vet under Animal Hospital. We've used them for umpteen years, probably longer than I've been at the sheriff's office. We've used them. But that's a special relationship as well because they see all kinds of dogs, and I'm sure they have relationships with people in the community that bring their dogs there. But it is kind of special with these working service dogs, and the bond that we have with the doctors there and the vet techs. They treat us awesome. And so, like you said, when Falco went down, that affected a lot of us.
Yeah.
And they're part of our family down there at the vet because they're taking care of our assets. You know what I mean? They're taking care of our dogs.
Do the dogs wear anything special, or do they have any special gear when they're out working, or they just dress like a normal dog?
No, they're your typical dogs. We do have what we call patrol harnesses or tracking harnesses, and that's the ones you see just with around the collar and around the belly with the sheriff logo or the sheriff name printed on it, and that's just used for tracking. That's basically all they wear. It's not like we're asking them to walk around in bulletproof vest in 100-degree weather. That's not something we do here at the sheriff's office, and a lot of agencies don't do in Florida because of the heat and the strain on the dogs.
And the canine handlers, they all have different cars than some of the other patrol
Yes, sir.
deputies.
We are lucky. We do have Tahoes, so it's a little more comfortable for the handler and for the dog. But those Tahoes are very well equipped with a lot of technology. To make sure that our dogs are staying safe while we're not in the cars.
Really? Like what?
So we have a heat alarm system that hooks to our cell phone. So
really?
At any given time, I can pull up the app on my phone and see the temperature of the car that hides hanging out in. And it also has a threshold monitor. So once it gets to a certain point, heat-wise, we'll get an audible tone. If we don't respond to it within a minute or two, our supervisor and all these other phones are going off. So that way we're protecting that dog that's in that car. The only thing I can't do with it is change the radio station.
Really?
So, yeah.
That's fascinating because I know you do hear these stories, not just civilians, but it happens with deputies where, they work all day and maybe they go in somewhere or they forget. And this happens with children too sometimes. Absolutely. And so to have those precautions in place, I understand why they do it, especially here in Florida because, you leave your car for 5 minutes and you come back and it's 130 degrees inside. Yeah. And so I never knew that. I never knew that there was like an alarm system.
And if you think about this, our cars are always running with those dogs in them. So if we're out on a call for an hour or plus and we're not utilizing that particular dog, that car's at an idle position. So we even have stall alarms. So if the car stalls or the engine stalls or anything like that, we're going to get that notification. Lights and sirens are going to go off. Our cell phones are going to go off. And we're going to be able to get back to that dog and make sure that he's safe.
I think that's good to know. Like I said, I never knew. Is that a newer thing that
I've had it since I've been in the unit. The cell phone application of it is only come into play for us the past 3 years, I would say. But the heat alarm has been around for a while. But it's definitely cool technology and something that I'm glad we have to protect these animals.
Is there like a cage inside there too?
There is. So if you look at your normal patrol car where we put the bad guys in the seats, that's completely gone. You still have the partition there. But they've got a nice, rubber floor. They got their water bowl. And like I said, he's probably listening to country music right now, so he's okay.
Because we're doing our podcast right now, and he's in the car.
He's hanging out.
Is that just in case like something were to happen and he's ready to go? And
yeah, you generally want to keep them, in the car so that way they're acclimated and we're ready to go at any given time. So unless we're on a call, we're doing training or giving them a break, they're in that car all day long. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So you mentioned earlier about retirement, not for you.
Right. Yeah, that's about 9 years away from me. So I got a little ways to go.
When is it time for a dog to retire?
Well, that's the $1 million question. When I do all these demos, that's what everybody asks, and it really is, it's up to the health of the dog. We've had dogs that we've trained, and unfortunately a year and a half being on the road, they've developed something or something wasn't caught in early screening or they've gotten injured and it's time to retire them. So that really, man, that's a hard question to answer because we want them to last as long as possible. We've got, like I said, 1.5 years to 10, 11 years, they've served this community. So really that range is all over the place and it's based off of health.
And I'm sure that goes back to the bonding. I mean, if you've been with your dog for 5, 6, 7 years, you kind of know, 5, 6, 7 years ago, he was like this or she was like this. And now she's changed over
Yep.
time. And anybody who's had pets understands you see a difference in activity level over
Correct.
time.
Right.
So I'm sure having that bond,
Absolutely.
you know,
you'll know when something's wrong.
Yeah.
Generally, you'll know when something's wrong or something's not right with a dog.
So what happens if there's a canine handler that retires? Do they retire the dog as well, or does somebody else take over? I mean, let's say you're near the end of your law enforcement career, but maybe the dog's not ready to retire. What happens then?
So that's a decision that our chain of command makes depending on the age of the dog, the usability, and think about this: how long has that bond been with that handler? Are we going to be able to reacclimate that dog to a new handler to service the community that we serve? And so that's their decision. But generally speaking, when a handler retires, they do have the first right of refusal of that dog, and that's something that we've honored here at the sheriff's office. And it's pretty cool thing, to be able to take that dog in retirement with you.
So you had said that at one point you had tracked somebody for miles and miles and miles. Is that a typical thing, or are there certain stories that you can remember over your career doing canine handling that really sort of stick out? Like you found somebody, or you found a lost kid, or you found a elderly person. Are there any that really stick out?
So yeah, the 7 mile one, I'll never forget this one as long as I live, because I got called out. I'm on a call out schedule, so I'd already worked my whole shift, gone home, gone to bed. And I got called back out about 3 o'clock in the morning for a missing person out in Apopka. Won't get into a whole bunch of details of the case, but it was about a 7.5 mile track that ended up way far away from where any indicators had been that this person had been. Unfortunately, we didn't find them that night. But what was unique about that is that where we tracked, because there was no investigative lead to that area prior to the dog. Once we had tracked, the detectives were able to go back, review camera footage of the Winn-Dixie and some of the local gas stations there, and were able to put our missing person into a vehicle that now they have an investigated lead and they were able to find. So why we didn't put the dog's nose to a human, they had no other way of putting that together unless Hyde had conducted that track. So I thought that was pretty special.
So during that 7 miles or whenever, I mean, what's Hyde doing? Is he just pulling at you? Is he tugging at you? How do you know he's doing his job and not just, just walking around the neighborhood?
Well, you can tell. It's like anything, time in the saddle. You'll know when your dog is either crittering off on a cat or a dog or truly tracking. And that's slow and methodical sometimes. Fortunately with Hyde, he's very easy to read. It's either he's pulling and ready to go, or he's screwing off and it. So it helps me know what he's on and what he's not on. So on that particular track, you think about 7 miles, we had a lot of road crossings. We had a lot of sidewalk transitions to yards, to asphalt and concrete roads. So it's pretty slow and methodical, but I knew he was tracking.
Does he take you places where you're like, I don't want to go over there?
Sometimes he does. Yeah. So we've been in some swamps. I can handle alligators and spiders and all that. I don't do snakes.
Really?
And we've been in some places to where I'm like, where are you taking me, bud? Now I can do all that stuff. I do trust him. As long as I'm reading him and he's doing the right thing, I'm going to go with him because we're a team. We're going to team. And that's any dog in this unit, any handler in this unit. At any given time, those other handlers that we have are running with me and running cover for me, or I'm running cover for them. It's we're part of the unit. It's a canine team, so we're going to go where the dogs take us.
So going back to the full service dogs, are there parts of their job that maybe aren't their job? And what I mean by that is when I did the talk with the aviation, they talked about how sometimes they're just up in the air and they sort of have like a psychological effect on the people below. Like, oh, if I'm doing something, maybe the helicopter's up there. Do the dogs have that? I mean, if you show up to a house and there's 3 dogs, and maybe they're not going to go in, but maybe somebody inside says, "Oh man, if they got dogs out here, this is serious."
Yeah, we definitely get looks from the community when we drive to calls and we're backing up patrol. Even if it's not a canine call, I'm still a deputy sheriff. I'm going to back up our patrol guys and assist them any way I can. So yeah, I would say there is some unique perspective from the community when a couple canine guys show up, but our dogs are job specific. We're going to put them on the ground when we have to catch that bad guy. So the community needs to know that when those dogs show up and those paws hit the ground, we're working. We're working. And so, like you talked about that effect with the helicopter, one of the things that I promised my unit I would get out today with this podcast with you is that it's important to know, for our community to know, that when you see the helicopter in the air and you see dogs on the ground, the sheriff's office dogs, it's probably not a good time to come out of your house and ask what's going on. You know what I mean? So I promised them I'd get that out because it's not really helping the situation. Now, obviously, there's something there that's unsafe for our public, for our citizenry. So we want to make sure that we're limiting their exposure to any kind of work that we're doing at that particular time. After that, come hang out. I'll give you a sticker. We'll talk to the dog. You can pet the dog, all that kind of stuff. But it's important for us to be able to get that job done without any other human interaction.
Yeah, you're not there for a parade.
No, sir. No, sir. That stuff's
Although
handled.
you do go to
we
parades.
do. I do my fair share of parades and being the hound handler. There's a lot of canine demonstrations. You've been at the Sheriff Safety Expo, and you've seen me interact with a lot of the kids in schools.
And the barbecues.
And that's a cool side of what we do. But when we're working, we need to be working.
And your dog stinks.
He does. He's a bloodhound. He's a bloodhound. Yeah. So he.
You don't wash them.
Yeah. Well, you do wash them, just not as often as you would wash your normal dog. That's because of the oils in their skins and things like that. The bloodhound world is a completely different world with it.
So tell me, this is something that's in the news a lot, and I know it happens, but I mean, what happens if you're a bad guy and you injure a police dog?
So right now, recent statutes, now it's a 2nd degree felony. It got enhanced to injure or to kill a police canine, as well as any kind of service dog, whether it be a search and rescue or our mounted, our horses. So they're all protected under that statute now.
Is that different in other states? I mean, I'm putting you on the spot here. I know you live in Florida. You work in
unfortunately,
Florida.
the sheriff only swears me in Orange County and Florida state statute, so I'm not familiar with a lot of other states, but I know a lot of other states have started following our lead on this in Florida. If they didn't have it on the books already, they're already looking at it. And I think it's super important to protect them, just like just protecting our deputies out there.
I'm going to ask you another question about other states, dude.
Sure.
And you might not know the answer to this. If you're in Washington State or up in Maine or even Alaska, do they have different kind of dogs up there? Are there different kind of police dogs?
Yeah, generally all these seminars that we go to and that the other handlers go to, and of course, you read things. It's pretty much all your Shepherds and Malinois. What's unique is I think I read an article not too long ago that Texas is actually starting to use pit bulls.
Really?
So yeah.
Well, they probably got a lot of them.
They probably got a lot of them.
Shelters all over.
They got a lot of them. So I think it's just limited to a certain breeds because of the drive. That breed is a proven breed for police work, and so I think that's what a lot of agencies are using. Bloodhounds. I attend a seminar every year from across the country. It's in South Carolina. It's with the York County Sheriff's Office in South Carolina. And there's bloodhounds from all across this country. So there's a lot of them still using them. Very rare down here in Florida. You don't see a whole lot of them. That's one of the questions I get. Is that a bloodhound? Yeah, man, we never see a bloodhound down here. But they are in law enforcement. Obviously, at a lot lower numbers than Shepherds and Malinois, but they do have an important role within law enforcement and helping our community.
Do you have to get certified, or not you, but maybe the dogs? Do they have to get certified every year, or is it just like a once-a-time thing?
They do. So the back to our instructors that I talked about earlier, we're unique here because we actually have FDLE, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, certified instructors that are able to certify the dogs on a yearly basis, and when they graduate school, we're able to certify those dogs.
And so do you have to keep it up? And do you also, do you do training every day, every week, every month? Or?
Yeah, so generally we're training at least once every couple of days for sure. But we do have minimums that we have to maintain our own agency standards, our own unit standards. And then obviously there's standards with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement that we have to have.
Do the dogs ever get to have any fun?
They do. They come on. This is all a game to them. It's chasing the tennis ball, so to speak, whether it's the tennis ball or it's the bad guy. This is all fun and games to them. This is their reward. But yes, they do. We play with them quite a bit. If you look out here on our field, and the trash can behind you that's 4 foot tall is full of tennis balls. So they get out there and they play with those all the time. So
let's say I'm out in the community and you're working or you're out with your dog. How should I approach you, or what should I do?
Yeah, so
as a resident,
that's a great question. Great question. Don't knock on the windows of the dog. That's for sure. That a lot of people, believe it or not, people do that at gas stations, thinking, oh, there's a dog in there, and knock on the windows. Let's not do that.
Right? They're not fish.
Right?
Fish don't like it, and dogs don't like it.
Let's not do that. So. It's generally, hey, have a conversation with me first. How you doing? Blah, blah, blah. What kind of dog you working? And then we'll introduce you to the dog. I recommend you don't walk up and start petting any of our dogs right away. My dog is going to be less intrusive, obviously. But still, you don't know if he's having a bad day, whatever. I can let you know those kinds of things. So I think it's important that we're communicating before we're touching the dogs.
And that's a good point. I think that's a good point for any dog, really.
Right,
don't just go pet any dog because you never know. So, Jeff, thank you so much for chatting about the dogs. I'm sure we'll be back at some point. I'd love to see him in action. And
you got to come out. We got to put you in the bite suit.
Hopefully.
Yeah, we'll get you out here.
Well, maybe one day.
Right,
and hopefully you'll never have to track me anywhere. Hopefully I don't
maybe.
get lost.
Who knows? Maybe.
Well, anyway, thank you so much for being on Behind the Star. And we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to Behind the Star. You can find us wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Also, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Until next time, I'm Jon Busdeker, and this is Behind the Star.